Hey everyone, this is Sydney Gerard with Soul Hype Cindy. We spend our lives navigating friendships, relationships, health. Let's do it together. Let's leap into our best and most enriching lives through true and inspiring stories. So today, thank you for coming to Soul Hype Cindy. And today we have my best friend in the entire world, Christy Sensing, who has quite the resume. She has a BA from Emory, an MS in community counseling. Tell me a little bit about that.
Oh, about my counseling degree.
Yeah.
I kind of grew up in a house with where we talked about mental health, kind of very openly. My dad's a psychiatrist. And so I got an interest in that field very early on. And so when I was an undergrad and was studying sociology, it was sort of, let's think about what the next step is. And so as far as a profession, I thought that being a counselor or a family therapist would be something I get a lot out of, and it felt very familiar to me. And so I found that program at Georgia State, that they had community counseling, and it was very, I'd heard great things about it, but it was very hands-on, and that they had great internships, and they sort of hooked you up in that way. And so that's how I started. So I got that degree and sort of started working at the emergency room, doing mental health evaluations.
So did you ever think when you were doing that, in-depth studying, that you would become an Uber Eats driver?
Did you really write that?
No, it's just, no.
I do for my family. I do have to pick up a lot of to-go food, and Cindy will often call me when I'm on my way to pick up dinner or get delivery done and that sort of thing. So,
like, what are you doing? And you're like, I'm at Aegean. I'm like, oh, really? I love it. By the way, I love Aegean.
Yeah,
and I'm like, so you're pretty much Uber Eats.
I am. It's not a profession.
It's not a profession. You're not actually called it. You're
I'm
a volunteer.
Amateur. I'm an amateur volunteer for my family. But yes, my family counts on me to go get it. That's what it is. And I'm happy to do it.
And you're happy to do it. You're a great wife.
I'm happy to do it.
You're a great wife.
You're sweet.
You're a great wife.
You're sweet.
And you were in the mental health psychiatric staffing for 15 years.
Yes. Yes. And so we would provide psychiatrists for, it was a tri-county area in Atlanta where we're from. And so it was Gwinnett, Rockdale, Newton counties. And so we would provide psychiatrists for those mental health, community mental health through the state. And so I did that for about 15 years. And so that's when I was not on the clinical side. And that was after I'd had my kids. And so not any major event that happened that I sort of pulled back from clinical, but I was probably 8-9 months pregnant, and I was in the emergency room, and I saw that things can get pretty rough in the emergency room when you're doing mental health evals, and especially with A&D and alcohol and drug evaluations and that sort of thing. And people can get really...
What's A&D?
Alcohol and drugs.
Okay.
Yeah. And so somebody might come in that is, either under the influence or, and so we would have security there and that sort of thing. But being 8-9 months pregnant and having to see clients there in the emergency room, it got a little tricky. So that's when I pulled back, and then I was no longer on the clinical side. And I miss it a little bit. I wouldn't mind going back sometime, maybe, now that I'm a little older, a little wiser. I wouldn't mind. I hope a little wiser. But I enjoyed the clinical side a lot. I really did. I got a lot out of that. So that's on my mind at some point, maybe, to circle back.
So you're married?
I am married to Mr. Todd Sensing. I met him in college. He is my love bug.
What is the one thing that you respect about Todd?
Oh, my gosh. I respect a lot about Todd. Just one?
Just one.
I would have to say, well, gosh, his work ethic has always impressed me. I've known him since college. He's always been a hard worker. He's always had a job. He's always, no matter what, he's always trucking along. But I would have to say the biggest thing is he's an incredible dad. An amazing dad, and has so much patience and so much enthusiasm, I think, to dig in with me and sort of get down and dirty with me, which is what we need to do, as parents. And you have to sort of put your own things to the side sometimes, as as a parent, and sort of focus on what it is you need to do for your family. And he's always been that way. And he's always been unapologetically there for me, just like I will, whatever we need to do, we'll do it. So I respect that very much about him. He is a good guy.
Speaking of being a dad, so tell us about your sons.
My sons. Okay, I have my oldest son is Raymond. He has gone. He went by Van. You know him as Van for a long.
No, I know
long,
him as Raymond.
As Raymond. Okay,
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah,
All right. Yeah. So Raymond.
That's his manly name.
That is his real name. So you can't argue with calling him Raymond.
I'm the only one in my family that goes by Cindy. I have two sisters. One was Virginia, nicknamed Ginny. And she goes by Virginia.
Yeah.
And then I have a sister that's Teresa.
Yeah.
Her nickname was Terry, and she goes by Teresa. So I'm the only one that was Cindy.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So I understand.
You get it.
The formal name.
You get it. So that's what happened. So he was Van. When he turned 18, he said, that's a baby name. I don't want it anymore. So he wanted to go by his official on birth certificate first name, which is Raymond. And so he'll put up with Ray. He'll put up with Raymond, whatever we do. But he understands that he was Van for so long. So people like you that he's known a long time, if you say Van, you're forgiven. But if you're a new meet and greet, he'll correct you pretty quick that it's Raymond. in at least a nice way, he'll say. And he is 23.
I can't believe he's 23.
I know. So, and Alex is, he's 21. And so they're both about to turn 25. They're 19 months apart. So they're both about to turn 24 and 22. Wow. And they're both at a vocational program currently in Freeport called Westonwood Ranch that you know. I know you know. And it's an amazing place. And so they are, Raymond is working, and he works in the office, and he does things like invoicing for the things they sell there, like lettuce and dog treats, and he works in the greenhouse. And so he's got a lot going on, and he also gets to have lots of time to go on deliveries and drop things off for, lettuce to the local businesses and brew chews to a hotel. The Pearl Hotel I know participates. And my younger son, Alex, is in the day program there. So he's there learning more about life skills and really some of the basics that Raymond kind of has the hang of already, but things like toothbrushing and, some of like cooking, making your own food, that's important. And that helps me at home a lot. So I'm glad that they're focusing on that. But some of the self-help things that he really does need to be taught hand over hand, sort of how to do it and do it repetitively so it becomes a habit for him. And then he can sort of translate that back home. And so we can, it takes a little bit of the work from mom and dad, for us to be able to let him do those things on his own. But they both really love it. They love it.
So for people that are listening that maybe don't live here,
right, or
know you or myself,
yeah.
Explain to them like what Westonwood Ranch is and what it's designed to be, and a little bit maybe about, the vision that and mission that Lindy had.
Yeah.
For children with autism.
Sure. Well, I met Lindy.
So, do you say children with autism, or do you say children on the autism spectrum? Is there like a thing?
I think some people feel strongly about one or the other. I personally hear it both ways and accept both ways, and I understand they say that it's person first language when they might say a person with autism or autistic behavior. I think currently that's the way that it's said more often is person with autism. Person first language.
Okay.
Well,
you're pretty laid back.
Autism,
you're pretty laid back.
I'm laid back.
But I mean, for those that are listening,
right,
they may not know that maybe somebody who's not as laid back may be offended.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's changed a little bit. Like it was one way a few years ago, and so I may not even be up to date, but that's the last that I know of with that as far as what's accepted or promoted as far as language. But yeah, so I met Lindy when we were at a different autism school in a different center, and when our kids were small. And so she brought up the fact that she was thinking about starting a new place. She had some land that she wanted to, build something on. And so she thought about this new facility that she thought, hey, our kids are going to be 18. Mm-hmm. And as we all know, they kind of fall off the cliff at 18 because there's not any support services. The school, you're done with school. There's college track is not.
Do you feel like that's evolving? Like they're starting now because it's so how old were you and how old were your sons when they were first diagnosed? So let's kind of go back to like the first diagnosis, like kind of. So how long ago was that? And so how long ago was it?
Okay, so Alex was diagnosed at 15 months. He was a baby.
At 15 months.
15 months.
And how long ago was that? So
he's 21 now. So a while ago.
Yes.
And Raymond,
most people had never even heard of autism then.
Well, it was around. It was around for sure. But and again, I don't know how much of this is just communication and the internet and what was available as far as people knowing about things. They knew about autism for sure, but I think that just the unless you had a diagnosis or had a family member or a friend or that sort of thing, you're right. I don't know that it was talked about as much. I think the awareness was certainly not there. That would have been 2005-ish, somewhere in there, 2004. So things were definitely different. I mean, if you think about how much people were using the internet at that time, people just didn't have that same access to information that they do now. And so it wasn't talked about as much for sure.
I'm sorry, so you said 15 months?
15 months.
15
yes.
months.
So
okay.
baby. And,
baby.
Yeah.
So how did they, even at 15 months, how did they know at 15 months?
Well, Raymond was older, right? So Raymond was showing some signs, but he was verbal. He had skills that were advanced in some areas and some that were, not advanced in other areas. And so it was trickier because you get the whole, well, boys just develop at a different rate, right? They talk a little later. But his speech was so focused on labeling colors, numbers, that sort of thing, which for his age, he was advanced. They said, wow, look at this boy. He knows so much. He's so smart. But when I would take him to a 3-year-old mommy's morning out, there was behavioral meltdowns and that sort of thing that didn't match where he was intellectually. So he was having all of these, all this positive reinforcement for the intellectual gifts. Here he was saying, I've got all that. They thought, good for you. But he was lagging in this other area. And so we had to make sure we addressed those other areas.
What's
what's
like
happening
when you went to the mommy and me things where were you afraid that everybody was judging you? You're like,
well, it was,
or that helped you see the difference, or
it did actually. And because my nephews at the time were also a little younger, and so I was not around them all the time either to compare. And so because my oldest was not sleeping super well, he had some other things that maybe a little bit of reflux and that sort of thing at the same time, which is also not unusual with autism, but I didn't know that at the time. I was sort of an isolated mom. I mean, I was not always out there putting, hey, let's meet up at the park, let's do. So I was kind of busy maintaining at that point, making sure I was sleeping, he was sleeping, I was eating, he was eating. And I didn't realize that was unusual at the time. I kind of thought that's what all the moms were doing. And so I was a little isolated at that point.
Didn't you say I remember you told me this, and I don't know how long it's been, but you told me that your hair was falling out. You were like, because you were so stressed out.
I was stressed out, and I wasn't, some of the basics like eating, sleeping, I wasn't doing. And so I just thought, well, this is this is what moms go through, right? Moms are, they all struggle. And I remember specifically one time seeing a good friend of mine who had also just had a baby. And I went to her house and I was in my pajamas, half my shirt was hanging off, and I was, just sort of trying to keep up. And I remember she opened the door and she looked amazing. Like she had her makeup on, she had earrings on. And I remember thinking, now what? Like that, what are you doing? Are you sleeping? I don't understand. And I remember she was like, wow, what's happening, Chrissy? Wow, you're obviously. And so I thought, well, yeah, my situation's a little different right now, but I guess this is, and as he got older, and those were the early days, but as Raymond got a little older, I started to realize, okay, there's a stretch here of development that's a little different, but he still fell within that box of maybe he's just a little, and so we didn't jump on a diagnosis immediately. And then when my younger son came around, it was pretty clear, even early on, around 5 months, 6 months, that he wasn't eating, he was not, he was crying all the time, he just was not, and not sleeping well, or it was either he was crying or he was just a little bit glazed. And I thought, things just don't look right. And then the milestones came and went, and so things like let's stack some blocks, to get, he couldn't do that, and so some of the basics started to really fall off, and so we thought.
So going back to you saying that, you were pretty much in survival mode. I just sleep. I need to eat, sleep, drink.
Right.
Eat, sleep, drink. I mean, eat, sleep, and drink.
Yeah.
Water, hopefully.
Little, maybe. You do what you do.
Chrissy and I are so
you do what you have to do.
Chrissy and I are so close that when I was pregnant with my older daughter, they told me at my 3rd trimester I could have a glass of wine. I went to Chrissy's house and had a glass of wine. I'm not doing this in public, but I'll do it.
But you said, do not take a picture of me today. And I said, okay, I will not take a picture of you. I did not.
So if you could go back to then, and for that mom that may be out there listening to this and is in the early stages of maybe the diagnosis, what would you say to her about where you were in that?
Yeah.
Like there, like what steps could she do to survive?
I would say, well, for one, I would say that things do get better. I think that you can get in a bubble of survival. It's like you said, you can't see the forest for the trees. You can't see beyond tomorrow because you're so busy just getting through the day. And that can be very isolating and it can definitely sink you into a self, into a bad period of mindset, because you can't think past getting through this next obstacle. How am I going to get through this next milestone with him? I'm just going to therapies. I'm going to speech therapy. But you can't think past tomorrow. And you think, is this always going to be the way that it is? And I would say to that mom that no, it does get better. Is different. I mean, it's not necessarily, everything is A-okay, 10 years down the road or 20. It's different. But I think that in and of itself is a positive thing, that the challenges even change a little bit, because you do feel like, Bill Murray Groundhog Day, you feel like you're just doing the same things every single day.
Okay.
And so that can be difficult to deal with anyway, if you really are doing the same thing every day. I would also say to show yourself a little grace and be patient with yourself, because
we all can show each other ourselves more grace.
Right. Because, we can be...
And others.
And others.
And others.
Because we're definitely harder on at least I expect that I'm harder on myself than I am with other people. I can see it so clearly for somebody else. Like, why would she do that to herself? That's, but for myself, why aren't you doing better? And why aren't you, and I think that's so common, with women and with moms and young moms. They want to do everything right because that's their baby. That's your baby. So what is the most I can do today? What is the, and if I look back at the time, again, we talked about like information availability and how much people knew about autism. I think at the time I was scrambling, trying to find out, which was so difficult back then, because you really did have to just get on the phone and figure out what doctor knew what studies there were. Is it really a double-blind study? Is it really, is it just somebody that you met in the parking lot that time that told you to try this new thing? And at the time, you're having to sift through what's real and what's not, and find the best thing for your child. And that is very difficult, because you want to do the most. Whatever the most is, whatever the best is, you want to do that, because you're watching your child struggle, you're watching your child go through this, and so all you want to do is make them feel better at that moment. How can I get them to feel better? And so how can I do that? So, I would also, advise, I guess, that's the part of showing yourself grace, that you shouldn't feel like you're on a treadmill or feel like you've got to race to that answer, because especially with autism, there's no right or wrong answer with this. There's a spectrum of skills and abilities, or what they would call a disability, on the autism spectrum, that there's no right or wrong answer on exactly how to treat it. There's different therapies. There's different medication that works for some and doesn't work for others, and that it's okay to take time to figure that out, that there's not a race.
Yes,
it's not a sprint.
Yes.
It's a marathon you're trying to get through. And, in self-care, I know you've told me a million times, self-care takes discipline.
Self-care is so important.
I'm surprised you haven't given me a T-shirt yet about self-care takes discipline, because you get on to me all the time about it, because you're like, what is the word you balance?
Balance.
You're like, Chrissy, balance. And, Well, because it's so easy to do this, because if something's pulling you this way and that way, you're like, hey, you've got to, like you've always told me, you've got to find a way to take time for yourself.
You have to take time for yourself.
Because you're not as good if you're not taking care of yourself. And that is something that I struggle with all the time, that I really have a hard time doing.
The first time I ever heard Christy cuss, I think we were probably friends for a couple of years.
It took a little while.
And I was like, come to a Zumba class.
Oh, yeah, that was the word. I forgot the bad word.
It's okay, but
it was a bad word.
It was a
Zumba class.
It was a Zumba class.
But I showed up.
You showed up.
I showed up.
You showed up
at that Zumba class. I was ill prepared. I didn't have water, and I didn't.
You did not. I remember that you didn't have water.
I didn't have a cloth, and I walked in, and I remember thinking, oh, great, this is dance. So this is a dance class. And you're like, look at you, good for you, taking time for you. And I was like, great, here I am. And 5 minutes in, I was like, what is this? What is this class? This is not what I thought. So it was not the relaxation. It was a full-blown cardio.
I'm sorry if I made it out to be like we were just gonna like.
Well, you had to get me there. You had to get me there.
But that's the thing is everyone's self-care looks different.
It is different.
Like my self-care is working out,
right,
and actually specifically dancing because I love to do it.
Yes.
I have reenacted the Footloose.
Yeah, you have.
Abandoned train scene in Chrissy's kitchen.
In my kitchen.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty spot on.
It was actually
Kevin
really
Bacon
spot
would have been
on.
proud.
There's a special wall section like this where, if you remember, where you're throwing on each part, you had it down. And I was equipped. My kitchen was equipped, so it was going to happen. It was going to happen.
So
it was a beautiful thing.
But no, so self-care, and whatever that looks like.
Yeah, everybody's different.
Everyone's different.
I was not into hot yoga. I'll be perfectly honest about that.
Danielle
that was not my thing.
Like, I love it. Oh. So good. It's so intense. It's so intense.
I can't.
But if you go more than like a couple times, then you get like to this place mentally.
Yeah, I get it.
Okay.
But that's not for me. So, but that's okay. But like I love walking. I love, so it's a little different, not intense cardio.
So self-care, giving yourself grace.
Reaching out for help. Which is huge because we were lucky enough to have my parents nearby, which again,
which is a huge blessing.
I mean, I can't tell you what a difference, and I can't honestly imagine what it would be like not to have family nearby, to help, and especially in those early days, because emotionally, you're like you said, you're holding it together. You're on autopilot. You're going to do what you need to do to get the day going and take care of your child. And my mom swooped in and she said, "What do you need?"
I love your mom.
She's the best.
Cute.
She's the best.
Cute.
She's the best, and she is all heart. She is 100. My parents, if you different. My dad is Mr. Brainiac. Mr. Let me answer that question for you. Task oriented, and my mom is the heart and the soul, and she is like, what can I do? What do you need? And I will get in there just like you on the floor, and I will play with them, and I will get out whatever the therapy is for that day. We will do that together, and she will come up with a new therapy on her own that she, her background is special education also. She went back to school later.
How interesting is that?
I know. And she already had the tools. I know she had the natural tools for that. But she is amazing.
Was that prevenient grace? But you get stuff like God prepares you for stuff before you even know that He's preparing you for it.
Yeah. Well, she's ready, and her heart's been ready from the beginning. She was an amazing mother anyway, and she's been an amazing grandmother. And my dad, having his medical background was hugely helpful as well, because I could go to him and say, "Hey, I've got this, this new study came in, and what do you think about this?" And he'll go through it with me and say, I would question this a little bit, and this actually does look pretty solid, and wow, or he'll send me things like, and look at this is sort of a genetic testing they haven't done before, and this is kind of interesting. It's new because they don't have a whole lot going on as far as new research and with autism. So he's always happy to share that sort of thing, and so he's so good. But I think the positive with them is that they've always been there to help, and they're always offering to help. What can we do to help? Because they see that it is a different life, a different path that does take a lot of physical and mental, energy to maintain. So.
Okay, can I just thank you before we go for introducing me to Make Wellness? I am obsessed with the Fit and Lean. I've been taking it for like 2 weeks, and I already see results.
My husband and I both love them so much too. If you want more information, please go to the show notes. Now back to the show. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the different path. Like you in your mind feel that you like not that we all, and it could just be me. I'm always like, oh, this is what it's going to look like. And so sometimes, God gives you something, a totally different path than you. So when that happens and when that happened to you, if you were like to go back and like meet yourself on the path, like what would you say to yourself?
I would say, and like any other parent, my husband and I, when I was pregnant, would just sit around and talk about what we think we'll do and what things we do with our children and where we'll go and what school will they go to. I mean, we just think, you think through these things. And when it obviously turns out to be something completely different, it is a different life that you're sort of absorbing. And so I think you do have to let yourself grieve a little. I mean, because you are living a different life than you expected. And so I think that's okay to give yourself permission.
Because I think most moms would probably feel guilty for that grieving, right? It's like, this is still a gift, but So permission to grieve.
I think there's permission to grieve on what that difference is and to acknowledge it, because I think if you don't acknowledge that grief a little bit of like, this is where my mind was and now it's taking a shift, I don't know that you can be fully present for your child that does need you in this different way, and to see all the joy, because there's joy.
There's so much joy.
There's so much joy in these kids, and these my sons bring me so much joy. They really do, and I don't know that unless you acknowledge that part, that grief that you do have, and you had, at that point of your life, and process it, go through it, talk to your husband about it, kind of live it, and really experience it. Then you can't really be there 100% to say, now I'm here.
Yes.
I'm here 100%. Let's just do this life. We're going to do it this way and enjoy it, because there's a lot to enjoy with them. They're amazing.
Yes.
They're amazing. Yeah.
I mean, I need to get Van to sell something for me.
I know, right?
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he says, if you have you've heard of sell those dog treats. He's amazing.
Yes.
If you don't have a dog, I know you know somebody that has a dog.
It's like, no,
I'm traveling. I don't have my dog with me. Well, they travel well. You put them in your suitcase. That's what you do. And if not, we accept donations. And there's the box. He's amazing. He is a salesman.
He's a salesman.
He is a salesman.
We would like to say business development.
Business development. That's what it is. BD. Business development.
BD.
There he is. He's BD all the way. And he loves his work. He loves what he does. He loves people.
He loves people.
And that I should say.
Because we have a mutual friend.
Yeah.
Miss D.
Miss D. We love Miss D.
Talk about, we give a little shout out to Miss Danita.
Miss Danita.
Miss Danita. She's
the best.
She is the best.
She is an educator and special. She works with special needs children and
in middle school.
And has basically worked with my son and stayed connected to him through adulthood.
She's an angel.
She is I can't think of a person who's just more pure of heart. She is just a giver. She is a beautiful person. And we love Miss D.
Love her.
We love her. Yeah.
Yeah. So people that have callings, like she's answered her calling.
Yeah.
And, she was our nanny.
Yes.
And when she left.
I remember that. That was rough.
I mean, I was like...
That was rough. Yeah, you were crying.
That was crying.
Rough. Well, because how do you let an angel out of your house? How do you let that happen? You don't.
You don't let him out. You don't. I was like, buy her house, Jeff.
Yeah.
He's like, Cindy. I was like, buy her house.
You did not want her to go.
He literally was like, come into the bedroom.
Yeah.
I was like, I walked in the bedroom. He's like, Cindy. He's like, you're the one who told Miss Cindy she needed to go back to teaching.
Right.
And I was like, but when it actually came, it was tough.
That was hard.
But
yeah.
That being said, if you answer your call, you will impact people.
Yeah.
And she's, we love her.
Yeah, we do.
We give a shout out to her.
Yeah, shout out to her. I adore her.
Gosh, she really is cool. So, but he loves people.
He loves people, and I would say, I know you do. You guys both do, and I think that you have that in common, because I think that he gets energy off people.
Yes,
and I think, like you do, he gets energy off people. His social battery is always full. He's ready to go. He is never tapped out after. The bigger the get together, the better. He loves that. And I should point out that's different than typically an autism diagnosis. I mean, that's something that I think. I hope people know is that not all people on the spectrum, individuals on the spectrum, are don't like interaction, aren't social, can't show affection. I think that's and that's certainly true for a lot of individuals on the spectrum, but not all. And that there's such a variety of traits that people on the spectrum have, and Raymond is one of those that just absolutely loves people. He loves to talk to people. He loves to text people. He will send out 100 texts a day to my sisters, my mom, ex-teachers. I mean, he's on the go. Like he's like, did you hear about the tournament coming up this weekend? Did you hear about the rodeo coming up? Just so in case you're wondering, this is what time it starts. And he is just Mr. Social Director. So that's different than a lot of kids. So I think keeping in mind that certain stereotypes, I think, with the diagnosis are not always the case.
So I honestly had never met anybody who had children with autism, but when we met, I hadn't had kids yet.
Yeah.
Chrissy hosted my baby shower.
I did.
Twice.
I did.
I love you.
Mickey Mouse theme.
Minnie Mouse.
Minnie Mouse, I'm sorry. Minnie Mouse theme.
And then I know that was a challenge for you guys because you were like, but you're so fabulous. And the Minnie Mouse don't really go together.
Right.
But you did.
We did. We pulled it off.
It
was a great shower.
It was
a great baby shower.
You know, when you hosted my second baby shower at your home, thank you.
Yeah.
I saw you like really like nervous and like, oh wait, y'all take this, and that's how I was. Sorry, I'm gonna get emotional. With one of my past best friends at her bachelorette party, like everybody else was like relaxed, and I was like, I wanted it to be so special and perfect and all the things, and I saw you do that. I was watching you, and I was like, oh, sure, you know, it's like so grateful for you. So sorry.
I love to do it. It made me happy. So happy to do that.
It was just so nice.
Yeah.
It was so nice. Sorry to get, but it just.
No, I remember that day too, and I wanted it to be very special. And your friendship means so much to me. So I know that was a big part of a big turning point in your life. I mean, how long had we talked about Cindy's pregnant?
Yeah,
so it was a big deal. It was a big deal, but
now Lillian's 12 and Sophia's 10.
Yep.
And I remember we went for a walk one time, and the girls were really little. And you said to me, I was like, so this is the thing. I was like, you're, you know, part of like the blessing of having children with autism is that like they're still like you can still like love on them like they're like young children.
Yeah. Well, that's what my husband says all the time. He'll say, selfishly, you know, they'll be with us a long time. He said, and that makes me kind of happy. He's like, to be honest, you know, the idea that they're not leaving the nest, and you know, and they will probably eventually, and at some point they'll have to if we're not here, you know, anymore, and they'll live on their own. But for the time being, you know, he said, I feel selfish saying that because I love having them around, you know, and they are still his little boys. I mean, Alex, who is 6'1", 250 pounds. Will jump on him like he's a kid. You know, he'll still want to tickle and wrestle and do things like he did when he was a little kid, and that makes him happy. You know, he said that's a big part of what brings us joy is to be able to still keep them with us and keep them close like they have been, you know, their whole life. They were little. But yeah, it's an interesting dynamic with them as far as their development, and as we get older, we know that we have to change and adapt to what it is they're going to need and what we're going to need. We're still relatively young.
You just said
I said relatively. I said relatively young.
So how long have we been friends? How long?
A long time. We've been friends since 2010, when I moved here.
Yes.
And we met.
Yes.
Yes.
How we met is I did. They were building a home. And I specialize in custom construction, lending, and I did their loan. And her husband, I had a ski trip coming up, so there was a tight deadline.
Yeah.
And he told his wife, he said, well, after I was like, they were at another lender, it didn't work out wonderfully, which is never is good when you get a loan.
It was taking too long.
It was taking too long.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm going to get this done. And he's like, but he started calling me every day. And I was
like, let's get this going, Cindy.
I was like, Todd, you're not allowed to call me for 3 days.
Yeah.
And he was like, I was like, okay.
You laid down the law.
I laid down the law.
Yeah.
And then he was like, hey, I think you'll like this girl.
He came home and he said, Cindy has been helping us with our loan. He was like, by the way, because I was new in town. I didn't know, I hadn't met that many people. And he was like, you know, I think you're really going to like this girl. She's fun. She's funny, and you'll like her a lot. And I was like, well, thank goodness. And so
I
did.
owe Todd for our friendship?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because he said, I think you need to hang out with her. And then we did, and we went out, and we had a great time that time. Remember, we shut down the night?
Well, this was before, this is what, 14 years ago?
Yeah.
So Alice Beach wasn't even Alice Beach yet. They had like 2 buildings.
Yeah.
And they had that appetizer thing, like
cooking thing.
Yeah, it's like, so you think you can cook?
Yeah.
So they're trying to bring people to Alice Beach because no one had ever heard of Alice Beach. Even like the locals Alice wasn't a thing back then. And so we went and we were talking, and before we knew it, they were taking the tents down.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, we're shutting the place down.
We didn't realize. We're
So
like,
we
I
hit it
guess
off.
the night's over. To summarize, we hit it off.
To summarize,
and we've been friends ever since.
We've been friends ever since.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about like awareness. Like now you see everywhere Autism Speaks and stuff like that. But I think for a lot of people, and I'm just hypothesizing, I don't know, but I would think that a lot of people, like you said, like the spectrum is broad.
Right.
You know, so, you know, you might think the kind of stereotype is this, you know, so kind of give just some tips. Like if you have a friend or have met somebody who's a child with autism, like how do you gauge how to interact with them?
Yeah. I would say, and again, I'm so grateful that there is awareness, and I think that has helped so much from when my kids were in elementary school and early on to where things are now. It is night and day with how much teachers at least know and are informed and can help guide the kids as well. But I would say as parents, you know, I would just say assume that they can. Assume ability, like assume that there's an ability there and move forward with that. And they'll tell you if they can't do something or can't do something. But if you assume that they can, oftentimes they will step up to the plate, and there's a motivation there to belong. And so I think if there is a activity or, you know, and I'm just an example, if you know, when Raymond was young and there was a soccer game, you know, outside, I remember there was a teacher that said, you know, she came up to me and said, do you think he'd like to do this? Or do you think we should ask him to do this? Or do you think he'll, you know, and I said, well, let's just assume he will and assume he can. And so the other kids sort of followed suit, and they said, let's just start asking him to do all these things, you know, with us and not assume that he doesn't want to or he'll be scared. Now that could have failed miserably. He could have said, get out of my, you know, no, I don't want anything to do with this. And that is, you know, I guess hard to tell somebody, take that risk and see what happens. But usually it worked out. And usually he would say, yes, I do want to try it at least and participate. And I think to assume that they want to do something and want to get involved is always a good idea. And often, you know, it may turn out that they don't. In the end, they may not want to join the group. They may not want to join the club. They might not want to do those things. But I think to at least make that effort to include them is really important. And I think that...
Isn't that everybody? Shouldn't we put the effort to include everyone?
Exactly.
But this is definitely more where I think people... and the only reason that I'm not this way is just because of our friendship. Yeah. But sometimes people, because they don't know what to do out of their own discomfort. Exactly. It has nothing to do with the child or the person. Right. It has to do with their own discomfort. They almost just don't do anything.
Right, exactly. And I think that I hope nobody feels badly about that, because I do think that's a very natural thing to feel that you don't know what to do exactly. And so you might retreat a little bit and say, or, you know, more often they'll ask me and say, hey, what do you think? Is this something that's upsetting for him or not? Which I appreciate. I so appreciate asking, you know, because that's how you find out information, as Elmo says. That's how you ask questions.
Is that what Elmo says?
That is what Elmo says. Elmo says if you want to know something, you ask a question. And so that's how you find it out. And so if you want to know, you just ask. You just ask me. And but I do think that that a lot of times people are nervous about it. And I understand that. I mean, before I had my boys, I would sense the same sort of, like, you don't want to overstep, you don't want to do the wrong thing or say the wrong thing, so you just don't do anything. And so I think now with awareness and the fact that it's talked about so much and there is inclusion in the classroom, when I was a kid in elementary school, and you probably too, we did not have inclusion programs. And so kids were kept separately.
They were.
Kids with disabilities or differences.
I remember literally, like, they were like leaving to go on a field trip.
Right.
And I was like, I want to go on the field trip.
Yeah.
And she's like, you can't go on the field trip. That's the special education kids.
Right.
And I was like, well, I want to be in special education. She's like, well, you can't. And I was like, well, but they're going on a field trip and I have to learn math.
Right. Yeah, they do.
I want to go with them. I belong there.
Well, they would keep everybody separate. And so I part of that whole debate, I guess, back and forth about whether or not there's more prevalence of autism, or they're just diagnosing better or whatnot. You know, people don't remember seeing that many kids. I know I didn't. You know, when I was in elementary school, you didn't see that many kids with some of the traits of that you see now with, you know, hand flapping, toe walking, some of the things that you would associate with autism.
So what are the things, the hand flapping?
Well, they're self-stimming behaviors is what they call them. So it's self-stimulation. And so, so when you see...
So, like, explain that to people that, you know, because I've seen the you know, but I mean, I do that. Like, I right around my nail. Like, is it that? Or?
Well, people would argue that everybody's got a little bit of a self-stim. And so things like fingers, you know, flicking or pin flicking or pin chewing or that kind of thing, hair twirling, hair biting, things like that. We sometimes do that, don't we? We play with our hair, and those are self-stimming or self-stimulation or self-soothing, behaviors. And so and so sometimes somebody on the spectrum might have self-stimulation needs that are higher than others, and some don't. They want less. And so sometimes self-stim is for people that their body is feeling Raymond can describe it to me. There's almost like a need to just jump out of your skin for a second.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that he can articulate that to me, because you don't know what that is if you just are seeing somebody flap their hands or,
yes.
And so that's something that satisfies a need sensory-wise for that moment.
Okay.
And it's soothing to them to do it. And some people seek out, they don't want the touch. So things like tags on the shirt and that sort of thing, they avoid those sort of things. So their stim may be different. They may look for wraps and things like deep pressure to wrap themselves in. Like Temple Grandin had the squeeze machine that she talked about that she would put herself.
Who's Temple?
Temple Grandin. She was a pioneer, really. She was one of the. She was diagnosed with autism many years ago, and she's written books, and now she works with cattle and that sort of thing. She's invented all of these amazing chutes and things that people today use as far as on their ranch and in their taking care of their cattle to self-soothe them and to do very efficient ways of how do I say that? Do what you do on a farm with cows and whatnot, a little more of the darker stuff. But she helps as far as managing and making that a good thing for the farmers and making sure that they stay calm and that the animals themselves are kept calm, I guess, during the time. And the way she did that was she invented what's called a squeeze machine. And it was basically a wood rolling machine that she would put herself through because she didn't know how to ask for what she needed. She needed hugs. She needed squeezing. And so she invented this machine that when she got anxious, she would just run and she would put herself through this machine. And so that was somebody she clearly needed that sort of pressure to feel okay again. And so people, on the spectrum, it's different. It's whatever your body needs. And sensory is a big part of it. That's why you see a lot of kids with headphones on and that sort of thing. That's because the noise is too loud. But some, you'll hear them with the radio turned all the way up. That's because they need it louder. And so there's no simple cookie cutter, way to look at it because every kid is different. Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about Lindy real fast.
Yeah.
So one thing that I wanted to make sure that I brought up in the show is that when your friend finds a friend who can identify with them better, some people, instead of being excited for their friend, like there's some things that I can never identify with your life.
Right.
So we meet a nice lady named Lindy who runs and operates and is the CEO and the fundraiser and all the things of Westwood Ranch, an amazing facility north of South Walton where we live. And when you met her, I was like, oh, God, thank you. Like there's somebody, even though it did make me sad as your friend, I was like, oh, like, because, but I like when your friend finds somebody who's, they say in the Bible, like, everybody has an Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like, everyone has an Elizabeth. Mary, Jesus's mother. Yeah. Her cousin. So everybody kind of has somebody like to walk through life. Meg Norwood told us that in one of our Bible studies. And so like I was so grateful that you had a friend that was in the same place and could understand, not necessarily the same place, but could understand things that I could never understand or relate to or talk about and all those things. And so through your life and through the years, you will have different friends that you're close to. And if they find another friend, be happy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're right. And
walk out of the VIP tent at the wine auction, half lit with appetizers for them.
That's what you do for me.
That's what you do.
That's what you do.
You go out of your way to embrace it and celebrate them.
And you have done, I have to say that you've done that. I think there's a saying that says behind every introvert that has any kind of outward bound at all, there is an extrovert that has adopted them. And so I think Cindy probably adopted me. And I'm not saying I'm 100% introvert, but I'm clearly not, I'm not as much of an extrovert. But you're right in that when you find other people that are going through the same thing, that there is something valuable with that because and I should also point out though, but having relationships with people who do not that is important too. And so from what I, get from our friendship is also different in that way, because you don't that your whole life is not just this either. Your life is different parts, and there's different seasons of your life, and there's different things that you're going through. And I think that people have different things they can contribute. So I mean, I value every part of like our friendship and friendships that I've made with other moms and that sort of thing that are going through. And I don't know if you remember too, you had introduced me. I was again new in town. You adopted me. New in town, and you said, hey, there's this 30A moms group, full of autism moms that I saw on Facebook, and you should go check it out. And here I was, like, again, I'm on autopilot doing my day to day, and I thought, well, let me go. And through that, I met several moms that I talk to all the time. We still text all the time. We're friends, and so those things are important. And I think it is good to connect friends with other people, that are going through similar things. I think that's what a good friend does. Yeah.
I mean, thing about you have to be really intentional about it too. I think that it seems I hear a theme about people. Something will happen to them, and they feel that they are the only ones going through it.
Yeah, it's very isolating.
It's very isolating,
right?
And it's a lie. And so it's so important to lift your head up, seek. I just feel that. Right now in our society too, with like social media and stuff like that, and I mean, we've been to several events together. We like to go to events, and sometimes it's the same conversation.
Yeah,
it's like everybody kind of is like, whatever I'm experiencing is my own struggle,
right?
And I think it's so important that we like tell others, like, you're not the only one going through this,
right?
Or have ever gone through it,
right? And that's hard sometimes. I think people are scared to be transparent, and they're scared to be honest about things that they've been through, because they do feel alone. If you didn't feel like you were alone, you'd share all the time, right? You'd be like, this is what I'm going through. What that's like, but you don't do that because people aren't transparent, and people are scared to be genuine, with what they're going through. And that's probably out of fear of being judged and having people question what you're doing and that sort of thing. And so that's difficult. And I do think that, I guess in my situation, or with parents, that have children with differences, you definitely can retreat into your bubble. And that's not just, as an autism mom, that's anybody going through something, that could be anything, depression or, other struggles. So maybe you don't want to talk about it.
Well, sometimes you got to pop your bubble too,
right?
You get. Hey, ain't nobody love the bubble like Cindy loved the bubble.
Retreat in the bubble.
I'd like to go leave a resort, and then I like to go to another resort.
That's right.
I mean, so I understand the bubble, but I feel like there's so much more outside of it that God wants us to experience.
Right.
Right.
It's hard to get past small talk sometimes, and I think that's why people are comfortable in small talk, and it takes effort and a little courage to put yourself out there, and say, this is what I'm going through. It's very difficult, and have you been through the same thing? And to connect in that way. But I do think that's how you make genuine connections and friendships, and you can help yourself and help others too.
Yeah,
like with this podcast. I think it's a great way to do it.
You literally have wrapped up exactly.
I have exactly.
It's like you do exactly what I'm trying to do.
Well, it's true.
Well, thank you.
True.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure and honor.
Did you have fun?
I had a great time.
See, I told you this is so much fun.
I know.
Oh my God, I really get to talk to my friends.
I was really excited you were doing this. I was like, this is going to be awesome. This is your thing. I feel like you being able to express yourself and make connections with people, which you do outside of here anyway, but to be able to do it in here and talk about really important things is amazing.
Thank you.
Is it weird to say I'm proud of you?
No.
Okay, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm trying. I'm trying my best.
You're doing great.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and having this time with us. It's I appreciate your time. Time is our greatest commodity, and I hope that brought some awareness and some gifts of life and just some stories that will kind of maybe change the way you think of something or make you take a step forward in going out of your comfort zone and embracing all people and maybe getting a different perspective that you may not have had before.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. Please like, subscribe, and follow. So Hype Cindy.